Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the BG Show. Big one today. I'm here to do a spoiler review for Deadpool and Wolverine. I saw it Thursday night, so go check out my rapid reaction. It's non-spoiler. This is your official spoiler warning. I'm going to go right into spoilers. There's no point in waiting. There's a lot to get into. I also have a separate video where I just talk about the cameos only, if that's your thing. But anyway, let's get right into movie. Last spoiler warning, and here we go. So, cameos, surprises. Overall, I thought a really solid movie. I don't agree with the reaction that a lot of people have that this is like the best MCU movie or like by far the best MCU movie. I know some of it's recency bias. I think, yeah, if you love the Deadpool humor and that's your thing, then yeah, I could see this being your favorite MCU movie. I don't. Does it even crack my top 10? Maybe, but I'll get into that. I mean, I think the top 5 to 10 is so clogged now with Infinity War, Endgame, Civil War, Winter Soldier. I mean, you could even throw Iron Man 1 in there. Some people throw in, like, one of the Guardians movies. You have the Spider-Man movies now. So it's really tough to get up there. Thor Ragnarok, Black Panther. It's really tough to get into the top 5. Obviously, the advantage this movie has is how much it's rated R. There is so much fucking cursing in this movie, like a lot of cursing. Very gory movie. There's a lot of blood. This is like definitely an R-rated movie, no question about it. It's not like teetering on the edge. So yeah, if you have kids or anything like that and you don't want them to see that kind of stuff, then yeah, don't take them to this movie. But yeah, let's get into the spoilers. So let's get into the plot, I guess. Pretty much the plot is that Deadpool is used by one of the TVA agents who's played by Michael McFadden, aka Paradox, and basically tells him that the Prime being on his world is dead, so his whole world's going to end. The Prime being Wolverine, who died in Logan. They do this whole opening credit scene where he digs up Logan, and just right off the bat, he breaks the fourth wall. He talks about Logan being an ending and all of this, and it was good at first. I thought it was smart to kind of just nail it right on the head in Deadpool fashion. But this is where, like, the split's going to happen, because I think a lot of people are going to be like, okay, I don't really like that. I think most people will like it, though, to just nail it on the head. And they pretty much just goes into, that they're not going to give a shit, and they're just going to go into it. He fights a ton of TVA agents, like, really gory to, like, this whole NSYNC thing, this whole opening credit scene. And it was pretty cool. And then they kind of flash back and they show you how he got there. And pretty much the TVA brings him in and pretty much tells him, on this whole mission. And there's a lot of good jokes and quips. It's kind of a tough movie to review because so much of it is jokes. So I'm just doing like the superhero Marvel part. But it doesn't do it justice. This movie has a lot of jokes, obviously. And when he's in the TVA, he's kind of looking around at different screens, and there's a lot of jokes. There's one scene where like Thor is saving him, and Thor's crying, so that becomes a running joke. And he makes a lot of jokes about the MCU and Feige, and he tells Fox to fuck off. So a lot of fourth wall breaking. I thought at times somewhat too much, but overall, I still thought it was pretty funny. So I guess eventually the main part of this movie is what happens, and I think watching Loki Season 1 is actually very important. I think watching Loki Season 1, and maybe Season 2, but especially Season 1, is more important than even than watching Deadpool 1 or 2, I think. Because if you don't know who the TVA is, and you don't know what the Void is, and you don't know what Elias is, and you don't know all of that, I don't think it hits as well. But anyway, they get pruned, they end up in the Void, and this is where a lot of the cameos happen. The first cameo being Chris Evans as Johnny Storm, which I thought was really cool. Unfortunately, this was ruined for me online. I actually had this ruined, but so it was this, and then I saw like a James Marsden picture as Cyclops, and I thought he was for sure going to show up in this movie, and then he never did. And I don't want to say I was disappointed, but I kind of feel like looking back on it now, should have been kind of like a shoo-in cameo. But anyway, so they're in the Void, and this is like they turn into like kind of like a Mad Max sequence. There's like a lot of cars coming and approaching, and I knew this was Johnny Storm right away. A lot of people didn't really pick up on it, but I also was spoiled, so I had an advantage. But anyway, you're kind of expecting him to say Avengers Assemble, and like Deadpool is kind of like getting really excited, and then he says Flame On. So I thought it was a really cool reveal that they did it that way. They let people believe it was Captain America until he eventually said that. So all these cars show up, and it's all of like a lot of the X-Men villains from the original movies, like Sabretooth, Toad, Pyro, and they all kind of have their own fight scenes. Sabretooth gets killed really quickly. Toad kind of uses this like magnet machine to capture them. And that's when we see our main villain, Cassandra Nova, who's kind of running the void. She is kind of, we saw this in the trailer, she's like living out of what looks like to be like a dead Giant Man, or Ant-Man in Giant Man, and living in his helmet, which I thought was pretty cool. And yeah, one thing I didn't mention was seeing Pyro and Johnny Storm fight. Pyro just totally murks him, like snaps his fingers and kind of like sucks up all of his fire energy. So I thought that was really cool as well. So we meet Cassandra Nova, and she's essentially Charles Xavier's twin sister who killed him in the womb. She's very crazy. And, you know, this is where I say, I don't think she's a bad villain for, like, in general of, like, a typical Marvel movie. I think in this movie, I would have just rather of, like, a physical villain, someone with physical powers, to have more of, like, a telepathic villain. I thought was kind of eh. But anyway, she's very powerful. She can pretty much control, like, just throw people whichever direction. She can read people's minds just by, like, sticking her fingers in your mind. So, you know, there's this whole sequence where she's, like, interrogating them, and Deadpool kind of rats on Johnny Storm that he said all this stuff, and she, like, snaps her fingers and, like, rips all of his flesh out of his body. The CGI was kind of shitty, but it was kind of I guess a little shocking, but definitely a gory death for Johnny Storm. They eventually escape, and they end up, like, in this pit, and this is, I think, kind of the highlight of the movie for me. I wasn't expecting this at all. We get crazy cameos, because at this point in the movie, the Deadpool humor was a little bit grating on me, and so here we get cameos from Elektra, Jennifer Garner, of course, from the Daredevil movies. We get Blade, which I thought was definitely the highlight of this movie, just getting Wesley Snipes back, and then we get Channing Tatum as Gambit, and we know he's wanted to be Gambit for years. So I thought all these parts are really cool. And then, of course, we get X-23, who's kind of the leader of the group. And she definitely got the most muted response because she's obviously not as popular as the others. But also, they kind of just spoiled it during the trailer, which I thought was just really, really foolish. I don't know why they did that. I didn't think it was worth it. They released it like a week ago. But anyway, this is like a core group of, I thought just a really, really like kind of random, but I thought they selected this group really well. I was really happy to see all of them, especially Wesley Snipes. I was not expecting that at all. They really, really kept that under wraps because I'm on the internet a lot, and I'm not even looking for leaks, but those leaks were everywhere. A lot of good parts. Not only were the cameos good, but I thought like the content of the cameos were good. I thought the best fourth wall break for me was just talking about how kind of like shitty Channing Tatum's accent was. It wasn't like shitty, but I don't know if he was doing it on purpose or whatnot, but I thought that was pretty funny. And even Blade made a lot of jokes about like he's only going to be the only Blade and will always be the only Blade, which would already be kind of a whatever line, but like especially now that Marvel is like struggling so much to make that movie, I thought was like really interesting timing. And yeah, the movie just kind of goes on. There's a lot of fight scenes between Wolverine and Deadpool, and then eventually we get to this scene at the end where they kind of like call all of the versions of Deadpool out of the void and into like the main where they are, and they have to fight all these Deadpools, and eventually they kill all them, but then they get regenerated and it gets resolved because like Peter, who's like the side character, is kind of like a legend among all of them, so he kind of like ends the fight. And I kind of like the ending of this movie I thought was good, but the issues that I have, like I said, with the telepathic villain, I just didn't like it. Just kind of felt like a generic superhero ending to me. I thought it should have, considering how much fighting there was in this movie, I would have liked them to kind of fight to end the movie as opposed to just like, they kind of do this thing where, so essentially like Paradox, who's Matthew McFadden's character in the TVA, is using this machine to kind of like get rid of all these timelines. And I guess they had to make this to plot because Wolverine is there, but getting into all this timeline melting again when we've already done it, like, and I know not everyone has seen Loki, but I feel like we've done this so many times, just like with the timeline melting and the timelines ending, and we're pruning this and pruning that. So it just seems like very similar to what they did, to what Loki did, or maybe a little bit, not exactly the same, but very similar to what Loki did at the end of season 2, where they're kind of like holding this thing together. Sorry. and they short circuit this machine and they kill Cassandra Nova. She kind of explodes. And so, yeah, I guess she didn't do a bad job. She was an okay villain. They kind of had to figure out to make a plot for this movie when in reality there is no plot. They just wanted to get Wolverine and Deadpool together and kind of branch their way to the MCU. What does this mean going forward for any of these characters? Deadpool's definitely going to be in the next Avengers movie. There's no doubt about it. If there already was, he's not going to be cursing or making any like R-rated jokes in those movies, and they'll probably even talk about it. Like he'll probably make a joke, "Oh, I'm in an Avengers movie, I can't curse." I'll actually guarantee he'll say that. But they'll still definitely have him. Obviously, they need like A-list guys, so like sliding Deadpool into the Avengers when they've lost Cap, when they've lost Iron Man, I think will be really important. I think he'll be in the Avengers with Spider-Man, and I think Hugh Jackman will make an appearance in Secret Wars. I think they're going to have Tobey Maguire in there. I think they'll maybe even figure out to bring Robert Downey Jr. back. I think they really want to get those three together. Wolverine, Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man, and Robert Downey Jr., kind of like the iconic three. I don't even know if those are the iconic three anymore now that, Chris Evans and Thor and everyone else has made so many movies. But anyway, I thought this was a good movie. Getting into my issues with the movie, I talked about the villain, but it's really just the use of the TVA. The TVA should have been, and what they did on Loki, should have been kind of like the main backstory for all of the multiverse saga. It should have been kind of like the through line, and it frustrates me so much that they didn't use it in No Way Home. I feel like No Way Home, instead of putzing around with Doctor Strange and that stupid spell, they could have just done it with the TVA, and it would have been way better. Just like way better. So I'm glad they used the TVA here. I just think it didn't hit as much because so much of the audience probably hasn't seen Loki that they're like, okay, these are just generic bad guys. And, the TVA didn't even, when you know the backstory of what the TVA is from Loki, I just feel like it's so much better and so much more poignant. But yeah, I guess if, to grade this movie, I'd probably give it like, for like what the MCU needed right now and what it delivered, it's like a 9. Me personally, it's more like a 7.5, just because I'm not as into the humor. But again, like I said, what matters to the MCU matters more than my opinion. So for the general audience, yeah, this is definitely like a 9 out of 10. This is a strong movie. Not perfect, but strong. I'm trying to think of anything else spoilers. The post-credit scene is, it's just Johnny Storm again. Nothing really MCU related that's like going to push forward the plot. A lot coming next year. We got Daredevil, we got the Thunderbolts, we got Captain America Brave New World, we have Superman, which is obviously DC. So there's a lot of stuff coming, and I think this one I'm forgetting. I know Agatha, but that's a show. But there's a movie. I think there's like 4 movies, 3 movies plus Daredevil coming next year. So we'll see what we got. Subscribe if this is my first time on your channel. Thanks, guys, for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments. That's my spoiler review for Deadpool and Wolverine. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next one.